You're listening to The Media Room, hosted by media expert and author Vanita Kohli-Khandekar.
Netflix was launched as a DVD rental service in 1997. 10 years later, in 2007, about 2 years after YouTube's birth, it launched a video streaming service. None of these events changed how people watched their entertainment drastically. It was not clear what was being set in motion. It is only when Netflix started commissioning originals, beginning with The House of Cards in 2013, the game changed irrevocably. A new set of companies emerged: Apple, Alphabet with Google and YouTube, Meta with Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp, Amazon with Prime Video, and in India, MX Player also. And many others started spending billions of dollars trying to get the audience that studios and broadcasters had had a hold over for decades. This set in motion a chain of events that we are still seeing playing out in the world. It has redrawn the global media map. In 2018, it became clear that the players with the biggest pockets and platforms would have the best negotiating power. And the first man who moved then to get out of the business was Rupert Murdoch, who chose to sell 21st Century Fox's entertainment assets, including Star India, to Walt Disney Company. Across markets in the world, mainstream media firms were in consolidation mode. Many built their own streaming apps and sunk billions into it, even while the core business continued to get eroded and subsidized these apps. Except perhaps for Netflix, no streaming service in the world has seen profits. The last 2 years have seen some correction and right-sizing as content budgets were held steady. You could say they were stagnant. Across the world and in India again, streaming video is now in its next phase of growth. It's seeing a change in the texture of the business, in the texture of the programming. It is trying to strive for a scale which would justify the kind of money that is spent on shows. Much of what we see is what TV did to achieve scale in the 90s. My analyst friends call it Pay TV 2.0, and I call it the linearization of streaming. I had chats with 3 different people on this change. Each of them offers a different perspective, but heard together, their views give you a complete picture. The first person is Tony Gunnarsson. He's a senior principal analyst, TV, video, and advertising for India. It's a global analyst and advisory firm based out of London. Over to Tony.
So there's been attempts to create a replacement of paid TV through streaming. Virtual MVPDs in the US, virtual paid TV operators internationally, those are the terms we use typically. And there's been big news around that recently in the US with Disney buying Fubo TV and that sort of thing. But what I argued in my report is that actually streaming through the flagship products of Disney Plus and Max and Paramount Plus and others, they're building up a sort of catalog of content to really appeal to a mass market. You will have, of course, the traditional fare of drama series and movies, some produced by the streamer or the media company that owns the streaming platform, but also obviously third-party content. And over the years, as you know, I've been covering this field for 15 years now, and the streaming services have really evolved away from that traditional SVOD model of bingeable series and movies, and they're becoming something entirely different. You have game shows, reality TV shows invested by companies like Amazon and Netflix and others. Documentaries have, it's fair to say, been a part of the streaming offer from the beginning. It makes sense. It's cheaper to produce than to produce full-length movies. But the picture, as I see, is that these streaming services have very much all genres, all types of content. Some of that content is a lot more linear TV-like than what it used to be. And of course, the big topic currently is sports. We're starting to see a lot more sports get put onto streaming platforms. And my day-to-day job, of course, is looking at not just the US or the most mature markets in the world, but around the world. One of the things that I found particularly remarkable or peculiar is how Disney Plus and Max, or formerly HBO Max, are positioned in Northern Europe, where I live. They are putting up big billboards with Swedish football leagues to sell subscriptions to Disney Plus. And I start looking at that, it's like, it's not Mickey Mouse, it's not Star Wars, it's not The Mandalorian, it is actually football, and it's got a Disney logo. And for me, that sort of illustrates this point that I'm talking about. The streaming services are becoming paid TV like. They're not trying to replace paid TV with linear channels per se, but the content and the experience for the customer is comparable to paid TV. So paid TV 2.0, it is a clickbaity title that I came up with, of course. I have to think about the audience. And I spoke actually with a client, Netflix, the other day, and they had questions about paid TV 3.0, which is their definition of streaming services with linear-like content. But yeah, it's hugely interesting, and it's not just necessarily about content. It's not necessarily about sports either, but to have a product, a service, a streaming service that appeals to a mass market, i.e. they have everything, which is what paid TV used to be. Then, of course, there's other things around it. We can talk about distribution models, the pricing, the services, streaming services are coming up in price. In Western markets, $20 a month for a streaming service that doesn't have linear channels. That's the sort of direction of travel where we are. So, what's the cheapest basic cable package in North America or Western Europe? Well, it's about $20, $25. So these streaming platforms are, from the beginning, they were dirt cheap, 5 times the cost of basic cable. Now they're kind of approaching that level. So in many different ways and different angles, I would say that streaming is becoming like pay TV.
You're absolutely right. And it's something one has seen it coming through and happening. But Tony, is it that the next logical step to take for more growth, for larger reach? So, I would say that prime S-word of getting whatever X million, India, for example, if you're looking at 60, 70 million subscriptions, I mean, that is the level to which the market will subscribe to S-word service at that, whatever the average prices are. But even in the rest of the world, I mean, Netflix doing the ad tiers, for example, and your report says that many of the big guys now get up to 24% of their revenues from the ad tiers. Isn't that a logical next step to growth, and therefore this massification has to happen? Does it come with some pitfalls, whether it's on the programming, whether it's on distribution? Because you talked a lot about bundling also in the report. And your previous report also, I remember you talked about bundling. So I'm sorry, there's lots of questions in that one, but if you could tackle that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, you're right. The advertising, I could have added that on my previous response there about paid TV 2.0, because advertising on paid TV. And for me, this has been a thought process that took many years to come around to. I've been covering Netflix and other services like that when they started expanding internationally. What they offered seemed radically different to pay TV, advertising being part of that. And as you know, Netflix, they up until relatively recently said that they're all about the user experience, and advertising or commercials shouldn't be a part of that. That's what they argued. But now everything's changed. They're making money, profitability, and no one's making money from streaming yet. So yeah, around 20-25% in the US. I think the numbers are slightly lower if we take a global view, but those streaming platforms rely already on advertising. But the point here is this is still very much early days. Looking at our forecast currently, which I shouldn't say, but I think we are being a little bit modest or conservative. I think the advertising part is going to go up, maybe set around 40-45% within the foreseeable future. That's how quickly this thing grows. And that really changes the economics of streaming. As I say, no one's making much money for streaming currently. In fact, the term we use often is creative destruction of revenues by shifting from traditional platforms to streaming. Paid TV has generated money for the whole entire value chain. It's a model that works for everyone. Streaming is directly opposite to that. But with advertising, it's starting to make more sense for others. But yeah, distribution and bundling is a super big topic for us. It has been for a number of years, but it's becoming more intense currently. So just to touch on that quickly, bundling, of course, telcos and pay TV distributors have been principal in taking streaming platforms and making them mass markets. That means selling or adding streaming services to existing products and services that customers have. There could be, I wouldn't go as far and say utilities, but broadband, mobile, fixed landline in some markets is still important. And, you buy those products and you get discounted or for free or otherwise subsidized access to things like Netflix. Now, the streamers themselves have realized that this is important. You can't go it alone against the hype for direct-to-consumer. They aren't doing direct-to-consumer. They are very much working with partners to make their services household services, scalability and that sort of thing. But yeah, we're now at the point where they're looking beyond strictly working with telcos. They're now, of course, doing increasingly, there are financial and banking products that are being bundled together with things like Netflix, which it's crazy when you think about that, but that's a fact already. Airlines, where you get points and then you can use your points, air miles to get on the streaming service, that sort of thing. Other consumer products and membership clubs and loyalty clubs, those sort of things tend to have streaming services as part of that. But lastly, we're now starting to see an increased interest in all manner of aggregation of services, of streaming services. And again, you and I have talked about this in the past. This brings us all back into pay TV, which was the big bundle of content from different producers and into one big package, right? And that's kind of where we need to be for the customers. And I have an example, if I may. The other day, we spoke to it was a telco in Latin America. They give for free 7 streaming services to their customers, third-party streaming services. So 7 services, Netflix and a couple of others, Amazon, are provided for free as part of their bundle of telco products and also telco TV and telco streaming service. They do this. However, activation of that is incredibly difficult. Customers get, for example, access to Amazon Prime Video for free as part of their mobile phone bill. But only 1/3 of customers actually go through the trouble of activating that. And the number of steps from activation to being able to watch something on Amazon Prime is 16 steps. That's the various signings, emails, confirmation, this, that, and the other. And it's very, very difficult for customers. So in my report, I talk about direct-to-consumer has sort of failed the customers in a way. Not only are they losing money, moving from legacy platforms and services to a streaming offer, they've also sort of lost sight of how you and I and, how people behave when they watch TV. It's too difficult as an analyst. Socially, I get questions all the time. I'm trying to watch Yellowstone. How do I do it? I'm like, well, you have to subscribe to this service, but it's not available on my smart TV, or I can only watch it on my phone. And then it's like the casting, and it's very difficult.
This is exactly why I think Netflix has the best UI in the business, the user interface, and the whole, at least from an India perspective, I can tell you, it is very difficult to sign up and get to the stage, because you sign up on impulse. You watch a trailer or something and you say, oh, this looks interesting. But it has happened to me at least a dozen times that I've given up because it's just so complicated. You're running from your laptop to your phone, from your phone to your TV. But tell me one thing. A lot of that, what you're telling me, whether it's bundling or ad tiering, etc., what does it mean? Because if it is coming back full circle to a more pay TV or a TV kind of ecosystem, does it mean also more rationalization of costs? Does it mean lower ARPUs and therefore lower profitability? What is it doing to the, because you, like you said, it's creative destruction of value. You were at $45 and $80 bundles and you've come down to $20. Where is the rest of the money going to be coming from, which creates the kind of programming for which you went to streaming in the first place?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And the devil is in the detail here. So this is like every company like mine are trying to understand the economics behind all of this. The biggest story, besides the advertising on streaming, is standalone bundles. So Disney and Warner Brothers has a deal in the US where you can get Disney Plus and Hulu and Max in one bundle for one price. Who's benefiting from that? I mean, customers are. So you get free services for the same price as Netflix without advertising. Okay, that bundle is with advertising. If you want to remove it, it's a lot more expensive. But around $16 for free streaming services that, they are in their own right, each of them competing with Netflix. Netflix without advertising costs around $16 in the US. So who's making the money there? How are they going to share revenues between Disney and Warner Brothers? discovery. We don't know yet. We're certainly scratching our heads and trying to figure that out, speaking to contacts in the industry, etc. But the point really is that these details, as I say, the devil is in the details. That's why it's taken this long for rival companies, US media companies, to talk to each other and try to do something together. So HBO Max or Max and Disney Plus are now sold together. That's taken them, a long time to get to that point, even to speak to each other and do that sort of thing. Others have tried in the past. Amazon, when they did Prime channels, they went knocking on every door of every TV and video company in the world. We would like to aggregate your services within Amazon Prime. And I know for a fact that a lot of people said, absolutely not. No way. We're not going to do that. But things are changing. And the reason for that is that no one can succeed on their own. So they have to work together. Telcos do a great job of aggregating the services. But that market, in my analysis, has reached an early maturity. There's not so much further they can go. So maybe 1/5, 1/4 of the market comes through the telcos. But these are services that are built for a mass market. And they're not going to get there through telcos alone. So yeah, there needs to be some sort of standalone aggregation of all of these services. And that means they need to talk to each other and work out the details around the pricing and who makes the money. It's very, very difficult. And I don't anticipate that being solved for it's going to take a couple of years before we even start to see the beginning of that sort of thing. But that's the way it's going, in my opinion.
So what about cable companies? Wouldn't they be the ideal sort of people to bundle this, especially because, let's say, in the US, for example, broadband cable is very common. In India, it is not. Wouldn't cable companies seem to be the right people to aggregate this? Why has that not happened?
That's a great question. So the first thing is they are already doing this sort of thing, but that's tied to, a legacy product and service. The challenge from their point of view is they have their own products. They're not necessarily worried about cannibalization currently, but every day it seems, certainly so far this year, I've spoken to customers asking about, should we keep the set-top box? Should we continue to do our own TV service, our own streaming service? We're, after all, bundling all of these third-party services, right? A lot of change can come very quickly and very sudden, but it can also take a lot of time. And we're now in this very chaotic period in the development, and like the news about Disney and Fubo TV and Venue, the sports thing, and DirecTV launching their My Sports package, $70 a month, and you get a bundle of sports rights streaming. A lot of this is happening really quickly, and there's lawsuits around it too. It's kind of like, think about like how the theatrical exhibitors, the cinema chains, are acting towards windowing in the US. Netflix says, we're going to release our brand new movie on Netflix, and everyone goes out, we're going to blackmail Netflix movies from now on. There are very powerful vested interests in our industry that, want to, obviously for obvious reasons, maintain the status quo.
A lot of what you're saying, though I see a lot of green shoots in India, is it more true for developed markets? Are there sort of trends that you see that this cluster of markets in the world, this is more true for? For example, in India, pay TV remains reasonably strong. It's not, declined as sharply as it has declined in the West. Even newspapers remain strong, by the way. Last week, I was interviewing a newspaper band. So when we come to streaming, is this more true for a cluster of markets, whether they're developed or from other parts of the world?
So again, I've had to go through a sort of evolution of thinking here personally, because I feel like maybe 5-10 years ago, a lot of the take was developing markets would leapfrog some of the developments within the mature markets, right? But I'm increasingly seeing, I went to Asia twice in the last couple of months, and a lot of innovation I see is actually coming from developing markets, not from, the West, as it were. I think a lot of innovation can come from India, for example, and I think it does. And that might actually take a while before those kind of solutions are put into practice in the West.
And India is also a very ad heavy market. But Tony, your prognosis for this year, and what is your sense of where we are going to see streaming? You're saying that streaming will overtake pay TV in the current year. So where is this headed in terms of the texture of the business and in terms of size?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a conversation yesterday with a company in LA that do both streaming and pay TV internationally and domestic US. And they were incredibly worried about growth and, bad times and change and things like this. And we're speculating where the growth is going to happen this year. Certainly, our numbers are indicating that advertising is going to be the game changer here. That's going to turn it all around. Not all of it, but make that change that is needed to take streaming to the next level. If you add up all the different pieces of online video, then yes, the revenues are going to be bigger than pay TV. And that's actually a big sort of milestone. And that's happening this year, 2025, at the global level, driven, of course, by the US and other mature markets. But again, I've seen similar things happen in the past where those sea change evolution in the market happens, and then suddenly, companies make swift decisions that changes everything, and then a lot of other companies will follow. I don't think it's going to be this year, but I think 2025 is going to be a modestly good year for TV and video. There's going to be more growth. Things like fast and AVOD and hybrid is starting to actually pick up in ways that I didn't really anticipate. I didn't think it would. And an example of that, which I keep returning to because I'm so fascinated by it, because I'm a premium contents guy, but I'm starting to see a lot more younger demographics, or even my own demographic, spending a lot of time watching reruns on fast services because they have nice smart TVs that come packaged with Samsung TV Plus, Pluto TV, that sort of thing. And they're finding reality TV shows produced by MTV 5 years ago, and they spend all their time watching that. My friends, family. And I asked them, so what about Netflix? Don't you watch, Squid Game 2 or whatever? Yeah, we watch that too. But no, I just want to watch this reality TV show. It's so good. The whole thing ran fast. And I've been a huge skeptic because it's reruns. It's daytime TV content. If I want to watch something, I would go, I know exactly what I want to watch. Okay, I'm an analyst, so I'll also know what service it is. The talkable new drama series seems to be less interesting to customers these days in ways it didn't perhaps expect. And I've been saying that because of public broadcasters in Europe, for example, fast is probably not going to be that successful. But I'm being proven wrong again. It is becoming super popular. And from people that perhaps, I don't want to be arrogant or anything, but people are, they're well educated, well read. They have the money to pay for content. They could buy and rent if they want, latest movies, or, they probably have 5, 6 streaming services, yet they choose to watch things with advertising on a fast service because it's so convenient. It's that lean back experience that all the people like you and me would remember, it really appeals to people. And I didn't think it would be this perverse, but it really is. It's really, really powerful.
What you're saying resonates in some way, but in India, at the top end, we are all, I think streaming is very well penetrated, but at the middle and the lower end, what is driving growth of video, and that India is like huge video consumption, is free TV and fast. So YouTube, and there's a free DTH, what you call a satellite service, we call it direct to home. It's called Free Dish. It's from the state broadcaster. And YouTube. These are the any free video you pick up. And it also gets, YouTube alone is a $2 billion advertising business. Just YouTube. And of course, your Samsungs, etc., offer anything like 50 to 100 channels, which is a fast market. All of that is the growing end of the pie, not this end of the pie.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like fast, it's not about the number of channels, because it doesn't matter if, you can have 10,000 channels and people only watch 5, but those 5 are watched enormously. Fast is going to be like YouTube. The YouTube is the world's biggest TV service currently, and it continues to be. And like I thought maybe 5 years ago that YouTube would lose out to public broadcasters because they are loved everywhere, but also to ASCOL services. But actually, YouTube just continues to grow. It's the big success story. We shouldn't be talking so much about Netflix. It's actually YouTube. And I don't think we really fully understand how powerful they are. Personally, I see it for game streaming. It's super If you play video games, you also have to watch others play video games. I used to stand on stage and say, I'm too old to even understand why you would do that. Well, I do it myself now. But it's not just that. It's just YouTube has democratized TV viewing and TV producing, content producing in ways that I'm continue to be fascinated by it.
Now let's zoom in on the Asia Pacific markets with Vivek Kuto, co-founder and executive director of Media Partners Asia. MPA is my go-to firm for research on the Asia-Pac media and telecom sector. It's a Singapore-based research advisory and consulting firm. Over to Vivek.
At a more accelerated level is the pace of transition online. If we look at it, $24 to $25 billion in new revenues over the next 5 years are coming almost entirely from the streaming economy, led by UGC, and then obviously subscription video on demand, and then what we call premium advertising video on demand, which is very important for some of the key local players that we look at. With that surprise comes the disappointment and challenge that television is declining faster than we expected. We always thought about TV's declines as very much a US phenomenon, but it's actually happening at a pretty accelerated way, particularly in the advertising economy in India and in Japan and in Indonesia and even in South Korea. These are big TV markets. I think that's something very important. At the same time, as a result of that, you're seeing new things develop, such as retail media, where you're seeing these big commerce giants really grow advertising pools. In fact, 50% of incremental growth over the next 5 years is going to come through in the ad economy specifically, is going to come through retail media, particularly in the top 6 markets. And that includes China, Japan, and India.
What do you mean when retail media?
Retail media are basically companies like Amazon or ByteDance or companies like, or even Tencent, who are big e-commerce businesses in the region and are growing at quite a rapid rate. Coupon in Korea and in the region. And we're seeing that particularly in China, India, Indonesia, Japan, and also in Korea. So advertising is going to be a big pillar of the business going forward. It's just going to get bigger and more important, particularly as players develop strategies to monetize on connected TV in markets like India. I think you'll see connected TV right now at about 15-20% penetration. It's going to double over the next 5 years. So yes, that benefits YouTube substantially. That's the largest player right now in connected TV. But it's also going to benefit other players, local players in India, such as JioStar or TiVo in Japan or various other players. It will also benefit long-form streaming players who love big screen consumption, such as Netflix and Prime Video and so forth. So connected TV is another big theme that we're seeing going forward. I think the other big theme that we're seeing is people are starting to make money in streaming. The first signs of people profiting and making money either as a standalone business or merging with other players to really compete at a scale. So we've started seeing that in Japan, in China, where Tencent Video is profitable now. And we're also seeing that in Australia. And I'm sure we're going to start seeing that in places like India and Indonesia over the next 3 to 4 years as well.
Those are the 3 big ones. Retail media, the decline of TV, and streaming is starting to make money. I'm surprised about, because one of the themes I remember 2 months back, I met Uday, and he says the decline of TV is because people are not investing in TV. How would you react to that? And one of the markets which everybody talks about is a little steadier compared to other global markets or APAC markets is India. Is it just advertisement revenue driven, or is there something more at play here?
I think there's a big structural shift in India, right? As you well know, particularly with Free Dish and the rise of cord nevers, you're seeing the universe shrink by 30 million plus. India's had its worst year in television since the pandemic. It's down by 8 to 9%. So for sure, a lot of these things are driven by where's your focus, where's your resource, where's your investment. Now, what we're seeing is, without a doubt, for the global players that operate in this region, some of whom will have legacy TV businesses, whether it's Warner, whether it's Disney, they, I know, have streaming businesses. They're putting a lot more focus, a lot more resource, a lot more investment into streaming and into storytelling for streaming and to some extent theatricals. For the local players, yes, they're putting more resource still into television where they can, but sometimes the pace of change and the velocity of change and shift online means that you have no option but to manage TV as a cost business or as a margin business with little resource and investment. And you need to focus more of your resource and capital towards driving streaming, or bowing out and just saying, you know what, I can't compete in streaming. I'll just do TV, and I'll license the hell out of the rest of my business, to these global players. So for sure, if JioStar feels between the sports and entertainment, they have a very strong business in television over the next 3 to 4 years. Let's see. But sometimes you can't escape economics.
Your last question, Vivek. Sometime back, you'd mentioned to me that nowhere in the world has a company managed to combine not just on a metric level or a revenue level, but the strength of TV. So, for example, a Disney has a robust TV business in India, but it also has a largest streaming platform in JioStar. How do you combine these two strengths to do something? Because what is happening right now is one business is subsidizing the other at a very broad level. Correct? The legacy business is subsidizing the growing streaming business. How do you do that? I mean, have you seen examples in APAC now because of this report or because of the research that Media Partners Asia might have done?
Yeah, we're starting to see it. But look, bottom line is we focus as a company on what gets investors excited. And right now, investors are excited about the transition online and how you can grow a connection with the next generation of consumers. And that generation of consumers is 15 to 30 or 20 to 40 if you want to be generous. And those are not TV consuming customers. Number one. Number two, investors are excited in how you completely disrupt content creation. Are we still going to be talking about people going to theaters in 5 years' time to watch 2-hour shows? We've just seen the worst year of decline in China and in the US in theatrical, right? In 24. And I hear India's not been great either. Okay. So how is that going to work in terms of people creating a shorter form of content where people want to pay, using new technology tools such as AI? I know a lot's been written about it. And look at that. Look, I agree with you. You have to focus as an operator on where the money is. And if the money is in TV, then you got to find a way of legitimately extending the lifespan of that medium. The issue is in these markets that a JioStar or a Video or a TiVo operate in, everything but China, you have the existence of 3 big giants, or 4, but in all markets 3. And those 3 giants are YouTube, Meta, and Netflix. In some of the markets you have TikTok, in some of the markets you have Prime Video. And those people just compete in the streaming economy. So when you have that depth of resource and investment to grow a category at a significant pace, and you're operating in TV and you're holding it on your shoulders just alone and no one else is invested, it's tough.
And finally, on to India. The last 2 years have seen a lot of action, both good and bad, in the Indian streaming business, especially a lot of consolidation. Reliance led a merger that saw the collapsing of 3 OTTs, Disney Plus Hotstar, Voot and Jio Cinema, into one. Telcos have pruned their bundles. There has been a fall in subscribers in 2023 over 2022, again going by Media Partners Asia data. And content spends have definitely remained stagnant. There has been in the last 24 months a whole air of gloom and doom about the streaming business. But funnily enough, MPA's latest report shows that the churn has been a force for good. Subscriber numbers rose to 125 million in 2024. This is India numbers, by the way. That is an audience of about just under 400 million people. But if you look at the total population of smart devices, that's just over 650 million. You look at the number of people TV reaches, that's 900 million people. So if OTT wants to achieve scale, those are the numbers it has to hit. And for that, it has to do exactly what TV did, plug into all the markets that India offers. This means doing what Tony talked about, and he was bang on with all of that. Ad tiers, sports, more massy programming, and you're seeing a lot of that across the board in the Indian streaming market. I'll come to that in a bit. But to discuss some of the changes and the prognosis for how this market will pan out, I have with me Sameer Nair, Managing Director, Applause Entertainment. Applause is a creator of Netflix's latest hit, Black Warrant. Some of its earlier series include Scam 92, Scam 2003, and many others. But Sameer's biggest claim to fame, to my mind, is the fact that he's the man who brought KBC to India as a programming head of Star in 2000. And he's the man who introduced Indian television audiences to the daily soap. So he's seen this space evolve over a continuum of time. And that is why his perspective matters. Over to Samir.
At the end of 22, when that Netflix lost subscribers for the first time in 32 quarters or something, and there was a real sort of a tailspin after that for their own share price. Then later the writer's strike happened, the actor's strike happened. That whole Netflix effect, burnt everyone in the US. HBO pulled back, Paramount, everyone went back. Disney proceeded to get itself merged into Geo, which has taken the whole year to happen. Sony and Zee were merging. So I think the last 2 years, which is all of 23 and all of 24, have been slow years from a business point of view. And there have been obviously a lot of backlog because the years prior, there was a lot of euphoria in the market. So there was a lot of stuff that had been commissioned, a lot of stuff that had been greenlit. So all of that was in production. So in many ways, what you're seeing now is the outcome of that, right? That there are a lot of the announcements, late announcements are things which have been in the works. It's not like started now. It's been in progress for some time. Now things are looking better because I think the mergers that have to happen have happened and the divorces that had to happen have happened. So now it's all sort of clearer as to that this is the roadmap, this is the way ahead. And there is a market, there is S-word, A-word, all of that is there. So I think few things that come to play in this is that obviously there's been some degree of rationalization with regard to cost, as in how much to spend on content creation. So that's one thing that's happened and that has got a play in it. Two is the number of platforms, what was originally supposed to be 8 or 10 have now really settled to 6. So that's a little bit of a small, at least in India. And third is that there's this conversation happening about, not everyone wanting to do good quality premium drama series. There's a lot of talk of TV Plus. There's a lot of talk of long form content. There are those kind of discussions happening as well. People are still trying to figure out unscripted and how it will work in the streaming world. So I think all of that is coming to play. So I don't know whether it's real gloom and doom as much as a sort of a recalibration of now what's to be done, at what cost, at what revenue model. I think those kind of things are going on.
From an applause perspective, therefore, what does the year look like? And, have you had to make any course correction in these 2 years? Because you spend money on developing. It's not that you wait for someone to greenlight a show. That was your model. Have you changed the model? What do you do?
No, we are still doing what we are doing. We continue to develop shows. We continue to get them into production. We've produced a whole bunch of shows. So what obviously the last 2 years did to us per se is that it obviously put a certain degree of pressure onto us because we are invested in content. We are invested in making shows. We are doing all those things. So when the market slows down, obviously it's not a good thing. Not good for us, not good for anyone. But I think that whole situation is settling down now. As it settles down, as it goes forward, the market for content will reignite, if you will, as now, more shows are acquired. Because see, finally, at the end of the day, at some level, the genie is out of the bottle, right? There is already some 600 million odd customers out there who have access to, smartphones and to data. There are these subscribers already. YouTube is a 450 million base. People have bought IPL rights. These are stated media goals now. That you got to entertain a large audience and you got to give them content, you got to give them movies, you got to give them sport, you got to do all that. There's no going back from there. I don't think you can go and tell a billion Indians that, okay, guess what? There's no more streaming available, nothing available. Now just watch TV. There's no question of all that happening. So I think now going forward, some resizing is happening. So like, for example, like a lot of the platforms are looking to get movies that have done well theatrically and then come to the platform. So they're encouraging that and we're happy for that because we think that makes sense because it also splits the revenue. It does not put the entire burden onto the streamer. You also earn some theatrical revenue, which should be taken because it is out there and you get a streaming right. So those are good things to happen. Even with regard to the shows, some of the initial days, when the first time the broadcaster, when the streamers and all arrived here, there was a little bit of that drunken sailor moment. When you convert from dollars to rupees to dollars, it sounds really cheap. So I think all of that kind of expenses happened. But now settling down and working for some time, some costs are being rationalized. So those are good things to happen. So I think as well, like we had a great start of the year with Black Warrant. We've got some more interesting things coming up in the rest of the year. We've got some new shows in production. We've got a lot of subsequent seasons going on. We've got the subsequent season of Criminal Justice, subsequent season of Scam, subsequent season of Tanak. So that's a good part of our business. We've got some big movies lined up. So, I mean, even we've been through this little firestorm, including the LA fires at the very end of it all. But now I think it's sort of settling into hopefully calmer and better seas.
Little digression here. Scam. What is Scam 3 about? Which scam are you looking at this time?
He announced it. It is based on the wonderful story of Subrata Roy.
Oh, of course. Of course, we talked about this. You also mentioned, Samir, when we were talking earlier, that you're going to get into films. So is that sort of just a scaling up thing? Also, and therefore you have a larger portfolio of things to offer. And again, will the model be this same that you develop it totally, and then are you getting partners in? Because the money involved here would be larger, I'm assuming.
Well, actually, films historically, the way Applause has operated is like a traditional film studio, where you come and you develop an idea, you sign up a director, you buy a book maybe or whatever, and you proceed to write a piece of content, and then you produce it, and then you release it, and then you sell the rights for it. Right? So that's how films were made historically. We did that for series. So what we are doing now is that we are doing the same thing. I mean, that's the way movies were made and have always been made. So there's nothing different that we are doing. Like, for example, now recently we've signed Kabir Khan. So we will work with Kabir Khan. We will develop 2 movies with him. He will direct one, produce one. We'll follow that same sequence of events. I don't think that the movie business is dead. I think the platforms still need movies. They still need big movies. And I think it's important for us to try and save the theatrical business. Because if you kill the theatrical business, then in a sense, the movie business will become a direct to platform business, which is then not going to allow you to make so many movies. It's going to be too expensive for the platforms, and it's all going to become quite difficult. So it is important for the movie business to have multiple revenue stream, for it to have a theatrical, a robust theatrical business, and then go on to streaming and satellite and music and international and all of that happens. So I think for us, it is a natural progression. We've made a lot of great series. We have made a few smaller movies, but they were more indie in nature. Now we want to really get into the larger piece of the pie, if you will, and work.
So Vigato was yours.
We made Zugato. We made Sharma Ji Ki Beti. We made The Lo Pyar. So we made a few. We made a film with Aparna Sen, which is yet to release. So we've done a few, but they were smaller movies, more designed for a straight to platform kind of release as compared to going theatrical and then streaming. But currently we're shooting a film called Bison, directed by Mai Selvaraj and produced by Neelam Paranji, which is currently filming, and that is going to come to stream on Netflix after its theatrical release.
Amazon is planning to get into film production. They said that it's a better way, thoda sa backward integration, as they say. But they said ask them to have a theatrical release and then, because that brings value to the entire ecosystem. Otherwise, you disrupt it.
And also what the theatrical release does is that it does a certain degree of marketing and promotion for the film. A theatrically successful film creates a very positive vibe. And in any case, because we've got such few screens available, not everyone sees the movie, right? So even if you take a movie like Pushpa 2, which is done so well, there are still enough number of people who haven't seen it, right? But it does well then for the platform, because then for the platform, it becomes there's much more excitement around it. So I think it makes sense for everyone to do it that way. You get better stars, you get better revenue, and hopefully we'll be able to add more screens. India needs more screens.
On the Applause side, anything you can share on there's films and there's, of course, more series. Has your capacity expanded hugely? Do you need to do that? What kind of goals are there for 2025?
Well, actually, from our scheme of things, we are just continuing to grow our business. The movies was always a part of the plan, so it's just now coming to fruition. Ambi is in production. That's our big series. So that's now currently in post, and we are doing, A.R. Rahman is doing the music score for it. So that's all in the works. It should be ready by the middle of the year, I think. June, July, tak ready ho jana chahiye. So we have to see. So we are continuing to do that. We've got now this show has done well, so we'll do more of that. I think both the series and the movie business for us is, it's an exciting time. It had been difficult for 2 years, but now, hopefully things will improve. I say hopefully because I hope it improves. It should. As I was telling you earlier, that a lot of our business is dependent on the economy, the larger economy, because the entertainment business and the media business operates in that space. If the economy being vibrant makes the entertainment business more exuberant and more exciting.
Last question, Samir, is one of the things, and we've seen this building up over several years, that as streaming tries to reach more people, if you look at the pyramid at the top end, everybody you had to reach through SWOD, a large section of that has already got SWOD or the subscription services. Now, a lot of the growth will be coming from the middle and the lower tiers, and that means more ad supported programming. Does that change both the economics and the texture of programming? And we've had a discussion on this earlier, because this is a different market. This is a market which will compete, let's say, with a YouTube or a DD free dish. It is that section. Because right now, when we talk about streaming, we're essentially talking Netflix, Amazon, Sony Live kind of subscribers or kind of audience. We're talking about a far more broad based audience here, going for professionally created programming. So, how do you see that panning out? It looks more like TV to me, frankly.
It does look like TV. And the thing is that TV itself, Anita, grew over 25, 30 years, right? So in 2000, when we did KBC and QK, there were 25 million cable satellite homes that got to a peak of, I think, 197 homes in 2017. So now in streaming, when this term is used, that, we are going wider and we are going to a larger audience, we must understand that the larger audience is then mostly broke, or they are at a lower economic base. The reason why social and YouTube and all of that work so well at that base is because everything is free. And importantly, the content itself does not cost to make, because it's all user generated, right? So that's what is being consumed and used and sort of, really enjoyed. TikTok works like that, Insta Reels works like that, all of that. So now when you say that you want to make professionally generated content, right? And you want to reach out to this large mass, and you want it to be ad supported, when you're competing with these big social giants with their fleeting impressions and pennies instead of dollars for prices, it is a complicated situation. Because the default thing that happens is that you think that since I'm giving all this content free and it's ad supported and I'm barely making ad revenue, the cost of the content also should be lower, right? I mean, it's a natural sort of assumption. I'm not so sure how that works, because if you make low cost professionally created content, I fear that it does not compete effectively even with free UGC content, right? So it becomes it's a bit of a trick. See, at the end of the day, when you give IPL free, IPL is still ultra high quality, ultra international standard sporting content, right? And it's free. So that's like a good thing. That's why people watch it, and you have whatever 5 crore concurrent viewers and all of that. I'm not so sure if the same thing works with low quality professionally created content, because that you already got with TV. You've already got TV content available. You've got all the shows available. Something like an Amazon MX player is free. They are spending money on creating that content, but they are free. That's their big promise, right? That whatever we make, it's all free for you. Plus, they're going to take all the movies from Amazon. They're going to take all the reruns from Amazon. I think Amazon Mini is going to become quite a interesting player in this, right? And they're going to still spend money in creating content. So I think AVOD being a solution. See, at the end of the day, TV grew so much because we did spend money creating the TV content. No? I mean, all the unscripted programming on TV is international standard. Whether you're Big Brother or KBC or Idol or whatever, operates at international standards. It's not like low cost, cheap and cheerful programming. So I don't know. I just think when we are going after this big diverse mass and going to the bottom of the pyramid, I think you have to still go to them with a proposition.
It's very well said, yeah. Very well said. Because that's one fear. You wonder what will happen here. So, are we looking at lowest common denominator, or are we looking at slightly better? Because always the assumption is that the free market is about cheap content. So
Yeah, and see also one more thing in that is that if you take the example of what's happening in politics, is that there's so much of what they call revdi, right? That is giving things away free. But that revdi politics does not always give you the same return. Because at the end of the day, an audience, it's not about just getting free. It's still you're asking me to give my time to this, right? Like just because you're giving me something free, that doesn't mean I've got time to watch it. And I won't, because I've got so many other options to do. And there are so many things available. So I don't think cheap is going to solve it. What can happen, of course, is that we can make things better. We can make things more efficiently. We can make things more cost effectively.
Amazon MX Player, a free service, has just announced 100 new shows, all free. Netflix, which had a great 2024 in India, has just announced a slate of 26 shows and films. This includes the World Wrestling Entertainment. After the US, India is one of the biggest markets for the WWE. And some forms of WWE got 50 million viewers in India last time round. So the gamble for reach and scale is very clear across the board in the Indian streaming market. There are some sports and sports-centric programming on other services. There are games. There's lots of family-friendly programming since connected TV is rising. Shows like Panchayat, Gullak. These are shows which encourage families to sit together and watch them. There is unscripted shows like Shark Tank, $1 Million Listing. All of these are meant to push up reach, scale, and therefore get a larger audience, get a share of ad revenues, and up the income for streaming services. In 2024, the entire streaming video business in India was about 35,600 crore. It spent just over rupees 18,000 crore on making shows and buying films. Not surprisingly, nobody made money. It's been 8 years since OTTs took off in India or streaming video took off in India. This phase of growth then will focus on increasing both reach and bottom line.
You've been listening to the Media Room by The Core, hosted by media expert and author Vanita Kohli-Khandekar. Do stay connected with more of our coverage at The Core. You can check out our website or sign up to our newsletter at www.thecore.in. Do also track us on LinkedIn, where we usually post synopses or extracts of our top stories and interviews. If you have any feedback, you can write to us at feedback@thecore.in. That is feedback@thecore.in. Thank you for listening.